Hello, Crawlspace listeners. Tim here. Just want to let you know that this is a new episode of Crawlspace that we're doing with Dr. David Perlmutter and Chloe Canter, as well as Lance, and I hope you enjoy it. It's sort of a new thing we're trying out. It's going to be called Torn from the Headlines, assuming we keep doing it, and I know we've been on a long break, and we will have more about that soon, but we're not going to talk about that in this episode today, but I do promise we will discuss what happened as soon as we can. Thank you very much for listening. I hope you enjoy. Welcome to Crawlspace. I'm Tim here today with three very special people. One is Lance Reenstierna. As always, what's up, Lance?
It feels good. What's up? It feels good. It feels good to be here. I was going to say it's like we got the band back together, but two members of the band have never met each other. So it's almost like we're forming a supergroup. I am super excited about this. It's a great concept that we're proposing to our listeners. But Tim, before we get to our special guests, our co-hosts, how are you, sir?
I am doing great. Thanks for asking. And yes, so this is going to be a little bit different today. This is a sort of a mini series, I guess you could say, that we're trying. It's called Torn from the Headlines, brought to you by the Crawlspace Network. And we're going to shine a spotlight on the latest and greatest and the scariest breaking news in the world of mystery, murder, mayhem, and the missing. And I want to introduce our two guests today. One is Chloe Canter from the True Crime Twins and from the very early days of Crawlspace. Welcome, Chloe.
Thank you so much, Tim. Thank you, Lance. It is a pleasure to be back.
All right. Good to have you back. And our other special guest is Dr. David Perlmutter of Texas Tech University. David, how are you today?
Very good. Thank you for having me on the show. Very happy to participate in this experiment.
Well, you've been on our show numerous times. You're basically a co-host. You're like Joan Rivers when Johnny Carson needed a fill-in. I've always thought of you like Joan Rivers. But thank you for for those just listening and not watching the video, you'd understand my laughing because your face was priceless. You weren't expecting to be compared to Joan Rivers today, I can tell. So that's awesome. But I want to just say we cannot go on the air with Chloe without saying there's no other person I would rather get snowbound with in Vermont, in rural Vermont, than Chloe and Tim. So I just want to revisit that real quick.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think a lot of people find that story very impressive, but I do feel I do feel the exact same way, that there's no one I would rather get trapped like that with. It was a crazy experience and a very good memory. But it easily could have been, the end of us.
Definitely. That's why we're laughing. It's nervous laughter, people.
Is this a horror podcast I didn't listen to? Or I don't know about?
It was. It could have been.
It was pretty close. Stranded in Vermont. We thought we could get up a hill, and it turned out that the road was covered in about 3 feet of snow, and we didn't get up that hill. Long story. But today, David, we would like to talk about some stories that have been torn from the headlines, and one that has been a major topic of news for the past, week and a half or so is the assassination attempt on former President Trump. Crazy moment in American history and American politics. Much like 9/11, Pearl Harbor, JFK assassination, a lot of people will remember where they were when they first heard about that because it was such a surreal moment. David, tell us your immediate thoughts on this.
Well, as you know, my background is that I've been a journalist for about 35 years, and I've been studying journalism. And now for most of that time, I've also been teaching. And I am really interested in the media coverage of crises. And I've written a couple of books about media and war, media and politics, elections. I used to teach a presidential elections class. But about 20 years ago, I decided I wanted to look at police and crime and law enforcement and the media, the sort of relationship where we see so much on television and movies back then and today about supposedly how police work works, how crime operates. And so we have a lot of quasi knowledge and pseudo knowledge, but most of us aren't daily involved in the criminal justice system. So there's a disjuncture there. And especially in the age of CSI, probably there's even more of a disjuncture about how criminal investigations, well, everything actually works. And so what I did 20 years ago is I called my local police department and they let me ride along. And luckily they were one person squad cars. So I sat in the squad car for 2 years, and I ended up being a book called Policing the Media, about the relationship of the public, police, and the media, and sort of the stereotypes people have of what cops will do in a situation, what they should do, because they got them from television. And I think this is probably a fantastic primer, because I believe, political assassination goes on all the time. If you just go to the south of our border here, there's an awful number of local officials in Mexico who have been assassinated, at campaign rallies and things like that. But in America, you have to. There were several attempts on President Ford's life. There was the famous attempt on President Reagan's life. And there've been some. And of course, we have to give the sort of Secret Service and the FBI and our services credit, because they've interdicted a lot of possible assassination attempts. But you really have to go back to Dallas 1963 for famous assassination attempt. And so I definitely think that there's so much to unpack here, because we live in this amazing new age. If you think about it, we have been analyzing the same dozen frames of film from the Zapruder film of the Kennedy assassination for all of this time. And now there are, I believe, maybe 25,000 videos taken at the scene. I'm not making this up, because everybody who was there had a camera and took some pictures, some pictures, some video. And obviously, since the event happened, everybody has posted. So you're seeing a culling on NBC and Fox, but if you just go on TikTok or Instagram or Facebook or YouTube, you can see 26,000 views of this event, which is remarkable if you think about how far we've come technologically and how much it's affected the way we have a national conversation. This will be remembered for many reasons, but one of them is that we all feel like we were there.
Absolutely. And Chloe, you had a bunch of interesting points when we had spoken off air about this. We said we might be talking about the Trump assassination attempt, and you were just getting into it like almost immediately. You were talking about the image that's like ingrained now in the media and now in our own heads. Like, can you talk about that?
Absolutely. The iconic photo that was taken of Trump right after he was shot in the ear with his fist in the air and the blood trickling down his face and the American flag in the backdrop, it's obviously going to be in history books. It's an iconic image. And I think a lot of people had the same thought that I did, which is like, he might win from that picture. I mean, people are talking about that picture all the time. They're getting like the silhouette of it tattooed on their skin. Like, I feel like the shooting event almost turned the public perception of Trump a little bit. And Trump even said himself, "Oh, I'm nicer now that I've gotten shot." And it's just interesting to see how something like that, an event like that, can evoke the public sympathy the way that it has. But there's a lot of things that the public has criticized Trump for as well, such as the reports that he didn't reach out to the deceased victim's family And I even saw reports, and I didn't confirm this, but I saw reports that he had like a mannequin on the stage at the Republican National Convention that had the deceased's name on the back of a firefighter uniform because he was a firefighter, but the name was possibly misspelled. But I did see the image of Trump kissing the helmet on the mannequin. Some people thought that the display was insincere.
If it's insincere, that's one thing. It's bizarre, in my opinion. I think that's a fair, I guess, assessment of that. If you're going to be addressing that part of the tragic moment in general, you know what I mean? Like, there's other ways to go about doing it. And initially, I just I have one quick point, and I have a question, media-wise, for either, if you guys want to take turns answering. But I guess there are two questions. Do you think, when you said, Chloe, that even Trump said that he's nicer after being shot, do you think that that's his people behind him saying, we got to figure out a way to, and I don't even know if this is like specific to him. This could be any politician who gets a near assassination, right? Their team has to be like, how do we handle this? Now you have this image of being like this hard ass, this like, you got this image going, should we tone it down and use this as a way to tone down that aggressive image that you have out there? Do you think that his team was doing that? Or do you think he's actually nicer?
I don't think he's actually nicer. I think, a few interesting things were done, right? Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who's running for president as the independent candidate, he had criticized Joe Biden before this assassination attempt, saying that Biden denied him protection from the Secret Service, which had never happened before, when he had requested Secret Service protection. And he thought that was really shocking and offensive given what had happened to his father. And he felt like the, quote, real Joe Biden would never do that. And that someone else was making that decision for him. But then after what happened with the attempted assassination of Donald Trump, RFK was then granted Secret Service protection. So I think not even just Trump, but I think the incident helped other people in politics maybe gain some perspective. And now he does have those protections because it's not really about the party. It's about people and making sure everybody's safe. So I think in some ways it did serve to like make people reflect on how divisive and how tense it is between parties. But at the same time, now that Kamala Harris is looking like the front runner on the left, Trump was like, yeah, well, I think I might be done being nice. So like I said, I don't think that it's a sincere change of heart.
Going to what both of you said, especially with Chloe and the new pictures that come out of this. So part of what I've been interested in my career has been news icons, and I've actually done a couple of books on them. I find it really interesting. If you go back historically, Teddy Roosevelt was shot while giving a speech running for election. He didn't win that election, but it was very famous. He was actually shot in the chest and continued finishing the speech. I mean, I guess, different protocol back then, right?
Wasn't there a Bible? Didn't it hit the
yeah,
Bible?
But he was hurt by it. I mean, actually,
it did puncture.
But he didn't win. I mean, I don't know whether the two really had something to do with each other or not. And of course, Ford didn't win. So I don't. What I found over the years is that pictures can be powerful, but our pre-existing beliefs and prejudices are more powerful. I always say believing is seeing. So people tend to reinterpret things by their pre-existing belief systems. So, if you do like I do, because like I love this stuff to learn about it. If you go on like right Reddit and left Reddit, or right Instagram and left Instagram, you see very few people who at least admit that their minds are changed about anything. I mean, I actually was, it's very rare to say this, but I was actually proud watching some of the hearings that there was this sort of brief moment of bipartisanship agreeing, hey, a lot of things went wrong here. We need to fix this for everybody, for the country. I mean, people on the very left and we're saying the exact same things as people on the very right. And I personally think that's a good thing for every once in a while, people to agree on one thing. It's like, well, we really have to have excellent security that doesn't have a cascading series of abominable failures in protecting people running for office in a democratic society. So can we just agree on that? And then we can start arguing and calling each other names on the other 300 issues. But for one brief shining moment, we had bipartisan unity.
Can we agree that murder's wrong?
Yeah, can we start there?
Well, no, because people are killed all the time and we approve of it. But,
right.
But, I mean, it depends what in the Bible, as I always like to point out, the Bible says, thou shalt not murder. Judicial killing, the state killing people was fine,
doesn't count
for blasphemy or whatever. So
personal vendettas.
Yeah. I mean, we approve of John Wick. We don't go, oh my God, that Russian henchman he killed. He has a family. He didn't have a dental plan. I feel so sorry for him. So we make exceptions to thou shalt not kill hourly, but we do agree that part of running for president is you should be safe and protected. So I just wanted to say those two things. Is that one? I think maybe 95% of people still think the same thing they did about Trump before and after. Although absolutely, that was a remarkable picture, and you're absolutely right, Chloe. That'll be in the history books. I sure hope that photographer wins the Pulitzer Prize for photography.
The one with the bullet next to him. I thought that was even a more interesting photo because the bullet appeared about 6 inches long, but I think it was just because of the exposure of the camera. And apparently that was the bullet that hit his ear.
There is so much that we don't know. Like I've been just up to this morning, I've been watching. There's been more congressional testimony. The FBI director gave testimony, and now it's. I mean, I've heard there were 8 shots, which is unbelievable. Oswald only got 3, right?
8 shots.
Yeah, that's
I didn't know that
came out of the 8 shots. I mean, there are so many things. As you know, I did another show. The great Carl Maimer has a show called The Conspiracy Skeptic, and every once in a while, we love talking about how conspiracy theories come about. And one of the things I say is that while we should criticize wacky and wild conspiracy theories, we should also feel embarrassed at how often governments take 500 pounds of Wagyu beef and toss it to conspiracy theorists. And I feel like all the things that went wrong here, probably, the entire massaged cow population of Japan was dropped off for conspiracy theorists because there's so many crazy things and wrong things. And one of them is that this guy got 8 shots off, if that's the case.
Yeah, I want to circle back on that picture, and it goes into what you're saying. Initially, I agree with Chloe. When I saw that happen, when I heard that it happened, and I saw the picture, I was like, this guy just ensured his victory, his presidential victory. And then the more I was reading about it, the more I realized this might have had an opposite effect. Like there were a lot of people saying, and it goes to Roosevelt and the other assassination attempts when they don't win. This is just chaos. I feel like the American public and the world is so exhausted from this political vitriol, this intense hatred and division between right and left and extreme right and extreme left. And now look what's happened. It's, there's an assassination attempt. I don't know how many people that want chaos like that. I think a lot of people, after they had time to process it, looked at that picture and said, my God, electing someone like this is just inviting so much more chaos. And then all of those images of January 6th started going through my head. And I was like, okay, why would you elect somebody who only brings chaos? And that's really what that picture represents to me. It's not heroic at all in my head. This is just what
I think that's my
brought
point.
to the table.
The picture is in your head, and you're bringing your pre-existing beliefs to it. I do think I just don't know how many people 10 days later are going to suddenly vote one way differently than they were before. This election is probably the one with the least undecided ever in the history of American politics.
There. I'm voting the Pilleri ticket, Pilleri
Mothman
2024 ticket. And we'll be right back after a quick word from our sponsors.
Thanks to our sponsors, and now we're back to the program. We talked a little bit about the conspiracies, and I do want to check in on that because, we talked a little bit about the JFK assassination, and the conspiracies haven't stopped since 1963 in regards to his assassination. I've been quite disturbed by what I've seen online based on these, the Trump attempted assassination. The 8 shots, like, real question, real concern about how that happened, Secret Service protection, why and how was he able to get off that many shots? But then there's like the other subculture of this that is sort of prevalent online. Stuff about the water tower in the background, and there's a figure standing on the water tower in the background, and the but it's so grainy in these videos and pictures. I couldn't tell what I was looking at, but there are people who are convinced that it's a second shooter, and it occurred to me that we've got the grassy knoll all over again.
Well, let me give you an example of this my Wagyu beef theory. I mean, the way I usually put it is that I think there's a lot of what I call level 1 conspiracies that we could probably all agree on. Like, for example, if somebody says, the banking system is fixed for the really super rich people against the ordinary people, that's not even a conspiracy theory. That's just the way the banking system works, right? And you don't have to go crazy. But then you go at the level 2 and you say, all the bankers meet every Thursday to plan how they're going to control the little people. I don't think they're that purposive. I think they just want to have more money. And then if you go to level 3 and you say, well, reptiles from Venus control the bankers. See, but we should look at what we do, those of us in the press, those of us in academia, those of us in the government, those of us in science, that sort of feed it. And the ones that just blew me away. I'm probably a bad metaphor here, but very early on, I saw a bunch of former Secret Service agents, and then I could have sworn I saw people associated with the Secret Service and law enforcement say, "Okay, why was Trump? Why did they pull Trump up? He was exposed again before they got him to the car. Okay, because that can't be protocol. That can't be protocol to hoist him up." You see his entire face. And then what I saw these former Secret Service agents say was, which is factually correct, apparently, well, they had been told that the shooter had been neutralized. And of course, my first question, and the first question of a billion people, was, how did you know there was only one shooter? Now, I happen to believe on the 9 days or 10 days of evidence that doesn't seem like there's evidence that there was real evidence that there was a second shooter, but they didn't know that in the first 3 seconds. So that was the most stupidest, I'm just going to say, that was the stupidest answer I've ever heard, which was that was the reason. And so if you're going to do that, if you're going to say, oh, well, we knew the threat was neutralized, how can you not feed conspiracy theories?
I mean, you were spoon feeding.
Some crazy staging.
Isn't there anyone who's monitoring the statements that come out, right? This is what we're going to say. Someone else should have been wait a sec.
Who work in crisis communication, Lance, but who I'm shocked by.
Yeah.
But you could see it as soon as Trump stood and they were trying to take him away. He said, wait. You can hear it too on mic. He tells them to wait. And then he does the fight thing with the fist.
He's almost wrestling them off.
I think when shots are fired, they're in charge from then on.
I agree with that.
The head of Secret Service, I believe, resigned like pretty shortly after that because there were a lot of criticisms, and TikTok's not a great source, but it looked pretty genuine from like it was shot from the perspective of someone attending the rally, and they turn and they can see that flat crouched figure on that rooftop that the shooter was utilizing. And like, I don't know how long before the shots were fired that onlookers were observing, the shooter on the roof, but it really does make you wonder, like, how much the Secret Service really did their due diligence that day.
Yeah, it's even worse. I mean, I don't know if you saw the testimony by the state police chief there, and he was more forthcoming than the Secret Service director had been. But again, as somebody who spent 2 years in the police guard, that doesn't make me an expert, but let me rewind a second. I think it's absolutely fair for us or anybody to criticize people who had one job, right? That like your job was to protect the candidate. Like, okay, and you're paid to do it. And so, you should be open to criticism. I always get really uncomfortable if we criticize ordinary people. Like, I don't like it when I say, well, why did these people in the crowd do this or do that? I thank God I've never been in that situation with my family. Nobody knows how they would act as an ordinary citizen. But as a police officer, as a state police officer, Secret Service, yeah. So this whole thing of that roof, again, the director of the Secret Service throws out, well, we didn't have anybody on the roof that was just across the street, basically, because of the angle of the roof. And again, 5 billion people hearing that going, what? I saw the roof. And then you saw right afterwards, there's video of Secret Service and state police standing over the body. The body is blurred out, but you see the blood trail, right? And they're having a discussion. First of all, they're trying to agree whether this was the shooter or not. They're speculating whether there was another shooter. So this whole thing of like, well, we knew the threat was neutralized, but that was just wrong from what their own voice. And they're standing on the roof. It doesn't look like they're sliding off or, having any trouble there. It's just, I can't believe that they're saying some of the things that they're saying. And I know, and I honestly, in my heart, I actually believe there's no conspiracy. I believe this is yet one again, a very lucky loner loser who stumbled into it. But like the government worked so hard to be stupid on its end. But I can't, I mean, I can argue with somebody who says there's a conspiracy, but I can understand where they're coming from because this is just so bad.
Yeah, I just want to add to that conversation about the Secret Service not doing their job, and that's your specific job is to guard the president or the former president, and they know when they sign off on that they're guarding with their lives, like they're literally guarding with their lives. And I don't know if it's a good comparison, but when the Boston Marathon bombing happened, to this day, when the marathon happens, there's still numerous agencies that are on rooftops monitoring the route on Boylston Street, like the finish line, like 11 years later. So what's the difference there? Why wasn't the Secret Service? How did they clear that area? How did they clear it and say this was perfectly safe? Hastily, right?
I don't think they cleared it very well.
No way. So where's the drop off?
I mean, it seems like they didn't get the amount of Secret Service they were hoping to get for this. And it also seems like the Secret Service had continuously advised the Trump campaign not to do outdoor rallies. There's video of that roof completely exposed from a building, and the Secret Service were supposed to have that locked down apparently. And I know they had help from local police and state police.
I'm sorry to interrupt him, but it's even worse from the testimony of the state police is that they had, it's sort of complicated. There's like window 1, 2, 3, 4, but they had two troopers, I think I'm correct on that, who were observing. And it wasn't clear whether they were observing the roof, but they were in the building, like accessible to the roof. They're the ones who one of them popped their head up, saw the guy with the gun, and supposedly the guy turned his gun on the trooper and the trooper retreated. Okay, well, you'd think at that point there would be some action. But apparently they had left their observation of the roof to go search for a report of a guy. And then now we're learning the FBI director said that the guy's rifle had a folding stock, because people were saying like, hey, nobody saw him with a rifle, and then suddenly he has a rifle. So was the rifle planted up there previously? And so again, there is going to be a gigantic, like 9,000 page report from 17 different sources. But going back to Cheadle's testimony, you saw we live in an age of immediacy. And so when Cheadle got up there, the Secret Service director, and said, we're still looking at that, I don't know how we're going to resolve this problem but it's true. 9 days later, you should know the answer to some questions. She was giving 1963 testimony in 2024. And no congressperson, even the far left congresspersons, were grilling her. That was how united our country was for this brief shining moment of 20 minutes.
It's a nice moment. I think everyone can agree there are some serious questions that have not been answered as far as the security and how that would-be assassin got to that point and actually fired off those shots and everything. It's just very confusing. We certainly are not going to have any answers on how today, but we can explore a little bit.
I'm not leaving until we get answers.
Well, we'll be here another 60 years.
Yep. And we'll be right back after a quick word from our sponsors.
Thanks to our sponsors, and now we're back to the program.
I'd like to ask you guys a question, because when you've looked at more cases than most police officers, because you have to remember very few people get to be detectives and actually investigate cases, right? So most police officers don't investigate anything. They show up. Most Secret Service people don't investigate anything. I mean, they're looking at a scene before the events and things like that. But like, you guys have done deep dives into a lot of there. Chloe, Lance, Tim. And I'm sort of curious from your point of view about when you see, and the Morimura case, this came up, right? Because didn't you guys attend or listen to some of the press conferences that were given recently? There was a press conference given recently up there?
Sure.
In the county? Yeah. So what is your standard for the kind of answers that you, as independent journalists, independent investigators, of what an authority figure should be telling you? And especially when years have passed, not just like days.
Telling us or telling like family?
Yeah. Well, I mean, what do you expect to hear? What's your criteria for, like, you should give us this information. This information. It's not going to hurt the case if you tell us.
I mean, I guess I don't expect to hear anything. I guess I expect to hear them say, we have no developments that are relevant to a resolution. I mean, the criteria, I don't know, doesn't really apply, I think, to law enforcement, because the expectation is so, I don't want to say low, but anything you get is beyond what you were expecting to get.
Yeah, in general, from my experience, the attitude that I get from law enforcement agencies when a podcaster reaches out and says, hey, like, can we talk about this case? Could I interview you? Could you share anything with me? If they call you back, you're lucky. And the most that I've ever gotten was agreeing to talk to me and then not showing up. I think they feel like they don't owe us anything, which is true. You know, as citizens, they don't owe us anything. The only person that I know that's able to call a police department and actually get information from them is someone who is also in law enforcement, because they'll see that differently, obviously. But usually I've had better success just filing a Freedom of Information Act request than talking to someone from an agency.
I mean, there are rare exceptions. Tim and I had the opportunity to work directly with the Saratoga Police Department, Saratoga, New York, for the Sheila Shepherd murder. And they showed us more than what they were probably supposed to show us. And they told us more than what they were probably supposed to tell us. And that was for the purpose of getting her name into a media outlet that wasn't a 2-minute blip on the news on an anniversary date or 40-sentence article
in Saratoga Springs. Yeah.
So there are the rare exceptions. So that's why it's hard to kind of formulate a criteria, because it's either all or nothing. I feel like in our experience, it's like, here's the entire case file with pictures that you never want to look at in your life, of autopsy photos, or nothing.
I don't mind hearing we don't know. I don't know if
true.
That's,
yeah.
A conflict with other folks on this panel. I don't mind hearing it because it's a little bit of a reach, but like in UFO territory, when we're talking about governments know, like, I don't think they know shit. Like, I would rather just hear that from them, be like, you know what, we don't know what the hell this is, as opposed to like silence, because then that opens the door for conspiracies. Like, so I think a lot of times they don't know. They don't know jack. They don't know more than us.
So what I find super interesting here is that you have this contradiction that's built into the police relationship with the media. On the one hand, they want to use the media for purposes of like getting attention for a case, for example, or help from the public. Then the flip side is you get a lot of bad help from the public or mishelp from the public. You know that there, for any of the famous murders, mysteries, and I'm sure, Chloe, Tim, Lance, you've found this, you'll have false confessions. The more famous a case is, the more people did it. More people will be walking into the police. I was looking at one case I won't mention now, but like apparently 4 people confessed and passed a lie detector test. And none of them are guilty. I mean, according to the actual evidence. So now, did you notice for this one, there was no call to the public to contact us if you know something, because everything everybody knew was already on Instagram and TikTok. There was no delay. Again, I don't know who in the FBI is going to be in charge of going through 40,000 videos that have been posted or up there of somebody who was walking by and in the crowd. Some of them are amazing footage. There was somebody who was sitting right behind Trump, and you heard the first shots. I am amazed that there's eight shots, because I only heard 3, but then of course that our ears don't work really well for this kind of thing anyway. But anyway, there was somebody behind Trump, and at the first shot, one of the Secret Service agents ducks. And I'm going like, that can't be protocol.
That's the opposite of what you're supposed to do.
Yeah, sorry, you're on camera. but my point is that it really is this confusing situation where the police want the media to be helpful in one aspect, but not in the other, in 37 others. And you can't do that with the press, right? You can't say, only ask me questions on this. I can't answer questions on that. So this case is going to set a lot of records for how law enforcement deals with because the media are us now, right? Every single person at that rally is the media, are the media.
That's a great point. It's a great point. I'd like to make a confession, and Tim's probably not going to like this, but Tim and I are responsible for the Gardner Museum heist.
Coverage,
yeah.
So you've been inserting yourself into the investigation, basically, by starting a show about it for attention?
Yes. Yep. Yes.
That's a great mystery novel idea. You know, the podcaster did it.
Yeah, that was my false confession. I don't know if
Okay.
you guys got the joke there.
There's a reward, isn't there, if I turn you in?
there is. If me and you turn him in, David. Yeah.
yeah. Just have to turn Tim in. That's it.
Well, this has been a fun chat. Certainly brushing upon some very serious issues here and trying to look at it from sort of different perspectives. And we appreciate everyone listening, and we appreciate your time here for everyone on the panel, Chloe, David, Lance. This has been a good chat.
Yeah, I can't wait to do more of these because the conversation just naturally flows, and I feel like we all bring something unique to this, and it's rare that you get the opportunity to have so many, like a collective mind like this, which is really cool, and a good proof of concept. I think we pulled off a good proof of concept here.
This was a lot of fun. I'm excited to do it again, too.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody, for listening. We really appreciate it.